Al, thanks for sharing with us. Frank? I bet they have a lot of questions to ask you.
First thing I have to say is Bob was an accident. Bob was never, ever there from day one. It was a whole unbelievable accident. It basically happened during the original pilot. I was a crew member. And I was the on-set dresser in the art department. And we were doing the shot of the day in Laura Palmer's bedroom. And I was tweaking the bedroom. And the camera was in the doorway. David was out in the hall. And David was like, jokingly said, "Frank, you better get out of there. You're going to get caught in the camera." And I kind of looked at David and went, okay. And then he kind of like went, this blood vessel burst. And he said, "Frank, down at the end of the bed, just crouch down there and act scared." And I went, "What?" "Just act scared." So that was like how Bob began. That was the initial, and then the wheels kept turning. The wheels kept turning. And I guess David, at the end of that day, in order to make sense of me being shot at the end of the bed, he added the scene at the end of the pilot, this was never scripted, where Grace Zabriskie, Laura's mom, is laying on the sofa and she's chain smoking. And she suddenly jets up and says, "Leland, I saw him." That was never in the original script, but he added it on at the end of that day to make sense of what he shot with me at the end of the bed. So this was like another thing that kind of got the wheels turning. It's the last shot of the day, Grace Zabriskie's chain smoking, you know, she's whacked out, her daughter's dead. She's wondering what the hell happened, you know, the whole thing. So she's laying on the sofa. There are 3 mirrors on the back wall where the sofa is. I'm clear across the room, being a crew member, holding cigarettes in my hand for her to do each take. So, standing there, she, laying on the sofa, she jets up, she says, "Leland, I saw him." David goes, "Great. How was that for the camera?" So the camera guy says, "Well, it was really great, but Frank was in one of the mirrors." And David went, "Wow." We couldn't have planned it. So this is where it kind of all started, with the Bob character. And it just, I never knew that I was going to be in the series. It was kind of like one of those things where they'd call me at the last minute and say, "Could you be at this, you know, on set, we need you." And I go, "Well, what am I going to do?" And they go, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Does David know?" They go, "I guess." So I'd walk in and I go, "David, what am I doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm not sure yet." And then it would like be 5 minutes before camera was rolling. "You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this." And then he'd go, "You know what to do, Frank." It was never scripted, it was never anything. It was like all at the spur of the moment kind of thing. It was a great experience. I know you guys have questions, so I'd love to hear your questions. Yeah?
Was that the first David Lynch project you've ever worked on?
As far as an actor's concerned?
Well, as a crew member.
No. I met David when I was working as DG for Dino De Laurentiis. And David had moved into my office space after Blue Velvet. And I kind of got to be friends with him and got to be friends with his daughter, because his daughter was his secretary at the time. and friends with Joanna and Patty Norris, and linked up with Patty Norris, who's his production designer. And they were getting ready to do One Saliva Bubble at Dino's. And Dino kept not, making a commitment about money, so David pulled out one day. And he left, and his first little project that he did was The Cowboy and the Frenchman. It was a short film. It was done for French TV, actually, but I think it is available on video. And I was like the entire art department for this little short film. And that was like my first experience with him here. Yeah.
I guess everybody knows this except me. Could you help us with the image of the horse?
God, there's a lot of, it's a lot of things, yeah. I think it has to do with whatever Leland was slipping into the warm milk. I think it's just, I don't know whether it is drugs or whether it is a symbol of something. Because I also had a tendency to, when you look at the killing of Maddie, and there's a shot of me with Maddie slow dancing in very, very slow motion. And there's also a kind of a horse thing going on between me and Maddie. And I don't know if that was meant to happen or what, but it has something to do with, I think, Leland and the drugs that were being put in the milk.
The Red Room shot, was that for the last TV episode? I'm just curious, was it one room and angles had been switched?
It was
or
one
were there
room.
really a lot of...
One room.
Okay.
One big red box.
Was that hard to do, that scene?
Well, it was difficult because we had to do, like, Al was saying, our entire dialogues had to be learned backwards. And then we had to walk, all the actions had to be backwards. The flame throwing that I did in that scene was all backwards. Everything was backwards. So in that respect, it was difficult. Because it was difficult getting your thought process working backwards. I mean, it's hard enough to work forward.
Bearing in mind that your image in the mirror was doing something that you can't see, or doing something that you so captivating.
I think it was just the image. The fact that there was this mirrored image.
Do you remember what you were doing?
I was probably just standing there and smiling or something really weird. It was, because we never really discussed it when we go in and film the series. We never really discussed Bob. The only time I think that David and I ever really discussed Bob was doing Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and we were doing the Red Room scene. And we were talking about Bob as being the bad seed. He was the bad seed of the group. And it didn't matter to him how much trouble he caused, whether it was in the limbo world or whether it was in the real world. He just didn't care. He was, an obnoxious punk who doesn't care what kind of havoc that he wreaks in any world. And he's out to have fun. He doesn't care about the consequences because he knows he's not going to worry about it. But that's the only kind of discussion we had about Bob, or how to play certain scenes with, restrained anger and stuff like that. But other than that, there was nothing really discussed about Bob and about the mirror thing. Another thing too is I think that another thing that came along with Bob was I don't think that David, David works this way where he doesn't know a lot of the times when he's actually making it, where it's really going, until he sees something happen, and it starts to make it different. It starts to twist it a little bit. And I think another thing that did do this is because originally Bob was the killer. But when we were actually doing the murder scene on stage on a set, there was one part of me that I did, because I didn't know who Bob was either. None of us did. So I didn't know really how to play him. So when we were doing the killing scene, I was playing him almost as if after the killing or during the killing, it was almost erotic to Bob, but he felt sad about what he did. So there were points when in the actual thing that we did in the murder scene on the series in the train car, where after it was over with, there were some of the screams turned into sobs and crying scenes. And I think David picked up on that and went into another direction where it was actually Leland feeling remorseful after it was over with, after he had done this horrible act of like, oh wait a minute, what have I just done here? Whereas Bob would have never done that, you know what I mean? So I think it was one of those series and things that just, every time he did something on stage, it evolved into something totally different in David's head. You know, it would lead him to another realm, another direction. Years ago, yeah, I was at San Francisco. I was a theater major, but I'd never done any film work.
So what I was going to ask is, have you done anything of that nature as a prominent character body?
No. Because basically, I moved to LA. I was, basically a bum. I was traveling all over the world. I was a bum.
I mean, because hearing you and hearing you about watching, not anyone years how is that for you?
Well, it's a great release. I mean, it's like therapy. Yeah, I mean, that was another thing that when Cheryl Lee and I we were getting ready to go into the playpen for the murder scene, and the Maddie scene, which were two really horrific scenes to do. And I said, look, we're going into the playpen. It's playtime. But it's really amazing how releaseful that can be. It's like primal therapy. To go in and be able to act that with an excuse. And get away with it. I mean, that's what's great. I would go home driving after one of those evenings of screaming and killing and torturing, and I would go home, wow. I feel really good. I was like really relaxed. Great. It was a great feeling. After. During it, it was scary. I mean, we'd go to the makeup trailer to remove our makeup, and we'd be like shaking because it was like such an incredible energy.
Do you think if the series could have really continued, or had David still doing that stuff, or was it just kind of dragging out?
I think the series could have continued had ABC been behind us a little bit more. They weren't really with us. They were fighting us all the way. The only person that was with us was Bob Iger. That was it. He was on our side, but they just, and as much press as Twin Peaks gave them, they still weren't behind us, to help us out. And I also think that David was so busy doing features that he wasn't as involved as much as he would have liked to have been, because he was so busy and so swamped. But had he been more involved with the storylines and more of the script, and had ABC given us 100%, I think would have still been on. But they weren't there for us.
This seems like a tangential question. Facial muscles of the plan
No.